my name is Alexandra Gallagher. I'm 20 years old and I'm studying communications and digital media as well as art history, a minor in art history. I'm Colombian American. I grew up in San Francisco, California, but also in Bogota, Colombia. So my mother is Colombian and my dad is American, so that kind of established like a global background, or at least kind of like a cultural background for me. I've always been interested in ways, especially media as a form of communication, and the ways in which it has a sociological aspect to it. I've always thought that there's a lot of parallels between humanity and the way we act and the human condition with also media, and I feel it's a reflection of that. So I've always kind of been interested in delving into the ways that media forms a connection with humanity and the ways vice versa. So it's always been just a sociological emphasis on communications that's been really interesting to me. I chose AUR because, as I mentioned before, I come from kind of like a global background. My dad's Italian, but he's Italian-American, my mom's Colombian. So being around different cultures has always been something that's emphasized in my household. And I kind of carried that when I was looking at a university. I wanted a global background that had many voices from different parts of the world, that had diversity, that allowed people to give their opinions from wherever they're from, or contribute something to a student body. So I chose AUR because I wanted to be in an international environment. I wanted to be surrounded by people with different ideas and cultures. And I thought that that would be the best way of learning, to be exposed to ways and customs that I was not previously exposed to. So the comm program, I feel like it's a very well-rounded program. I'm in some media and gender classes as well as some media ethics classes. So I think that it seeks to find a very well-rounded education, that you're looking at various facets of what it means to be a communication student. The sociological aspect, the philosophical aspect, as well as like maybe gender and other parts of what form our humanity. I think it's very interesting to get a view into that with the framework of media. I think an aspect of my studies that I've enjoyed a lot is being the fact that it's in Rome, because I think not only outside of the classroom, but in the classroom you're doing learning. In Rome you have to go out and be adapted to a different culture and learn a new language, try to speak with people in that language. Interacting with the Italian culture is a way of learning, it's a way of expanding oneself and one's worldview, so I think that that's probably my favorite aspect of learning, is just going out in the world and applying all that, everything I learned about like cultural relativism and other cultural studies, and apply it to the outside world. I actually really like media ethics with Coretti, because he gives us a lot of real-world issues that add relevancy to the subjects that we're studying. There's a lot of philosophical aspects as well, which is something that I'm really interested in. I think that putting philosophy and media together allows for some insight that you might not get otherwise. And I think it's very it's very relevant. There's a lot of relevant subjects. There's a lot of relevant content that we're exploring, and I think that helps kind of create some ideas for solutions, or maybe just arguments against these real-world ethical issues that we're dealing with. Ideally, I'd love to work with people that are from like an international workspace, because I think that can apply everything I've learned best when I'm working with people from different backgrounds. Probably something that has to do with humanitarian causes, or maybe something that has to do with problem solving. That would be really beneficial, to work as a team to help accomplish these or find solutions to these things. Typical day at AUR really ranges from what classes you have that day, but I'll talk about like a Tuesday. On a Tuesday, I'll get up and go to class at 9 a.m. Usually maybe stop for a coffee at Arquis or Early Arqui. There's always like a huge student body there, so like if you have to get work done, they're usually there. And then I do my marketing class, which is also a part of one of my communications requirements. And then I go to my media ethics class, where we talk about a lot of ethical issues and do a lot of case studies where we have to evaluate the morality and the ethical nature of a certain case. And then after, I'll have a bit of a break where I usually go get pizza, so original. But then I have Italian at 340, and I love Italian class because it's like, oh, I can finally use everything that I'm learning to like actually talk to people. I think it's hard to like learn a language when you're not in the country of like actual origin, because it's like, okay, what relevancy does this have? But with Italian class, I love it. I learned so much. And then after that, I usually just go out to the Archi with friends, have a drink, and then do some homework. Depends on the day, but that's a typical day in my life. I was, like I mentioned before with the internship, I'm really passionate about like a humanitarian cause, maybe an international cause where people work together, especially in an international background, work together to solve an issue. I think that contributing your voice and your problem solving in a group can really come together, and especially with with people with international backgrounds, it helps to have that AUR education, because you learn to communicate with people who are outside of what your own home country, what you're maybe not comfortable with, but you're forced to get comfortable with ideas that are different to your own. So I think that's an asset that you can get in a humanitarian cause, because everybody can bring forth their own ideas, and working together you can create a really good solution, or at least aid in a problem, aid a solution, or create an aid for a problem. I think one of the biggest highlights of being in Rome is that you're in Rome. There's so much history, there's a lot of good food. You get to interact with the Italian people, so if you're not Italian, you get a really good insight into a culture that's foreign to yours. Especially if you love history. I have some archaeology friends who are studying archaeology, and they're just fascinated by the surplus of history and, I hate to say it, but like lore surrounding this city. So there's a lot of history to the city that you almost are never bored, because there's always something to learn. If you see a monument, you can go ahead and do some research on it, and you'll really put together the pieces. It's a really, really amazing city with a lot of history. Yeah, I think that anybody is going to be afraid when they're leaving whatever has been familiar to them their whole life, because you're going into a new environment. And if you're like me, you didn't know anybody before you came here, so there's obviously that natural human factor, being a little bit apprehensive when you're going into something that's unknown. But a lot of my fears have dissipated, because the student body has been very welcoming. I've gotten to know people from various parts of the world. Like, I had never thought I'd meet Bulgarians in my life, but here I am. And I think that exposure is probably the best thing you can do, is to be open coming into a situation like this, and kind of be like a learning sponge for everything that you're seeing around you. Because when you come into any new environment with that mindset, you have tons to learn, you have everything to learn, and it shapes your worldview into something that's more rich and that's more broad as well. Yeah, I'd probably want to stay in Europe, because I really like some of the things that I'm seeing around here. I'm just looking for more, like, when I leave, I'm going to be constantly searching for that global environment that I've gotten here at AUR, because that's something that's been instilled into me, and I'm seeing the value of it all the time. So now that I know that I can, communicate with people of different cultures and backgrounds, and we can find a common understanding, I feel like I'm really prepared to enter the real world, where you're encountering people from different backgrounds. It's not homogeneous, and so I think that that's equipping me to go past graduation and kind of have those skills that can help me in the world. Well, I can say that we were doing some presentations in class, and I really enjoyed just delving into the case studies about certain things, the ethical dilemmas of these media, how do I describe it? Like the ethical dilemma that emerges in like mass media. And I think that media is one of it's dominant nowadays. And so I think that getting to explore and delve into its complexities is something that's really relevant, because media is a reflection of who we are as a humanity. So every time I get the chance to delve into a case study or read into some major ethical dilemmas that are plaguing our world today, I feel like I'm actually contributing something by understanding it and figuring things out, because I feel that it's very relevant. I think If you're going to apply for a communications program, you have to be very curious. You have to be very inquisitive, always have questions, because that curiosity is going to be the best thing when you're exploring something as broad as media. Also, having a sociological emphasis to your media studies helps a lot, because it brings relevancy to the subjects you're exploring, because it becomes more personal, it's more human. And I think that kind of bridges what might seem like super daunting about communications. Be very curious, have maybe a sociological interest as well, and I recommend being like a learning sponge. Don't let your biases get in the way, because they're going to be broken all the time when you're in an environment that different opinions than yours are being output all the time. So I think it's important to always listen, learn, and always kind of listen to opinions that are different to yours. Be open to understanding them, because in the end of the day, it will honestly broaden your understanding of a certain subject, and also your self-understanding.